Now, Arshi Siddiqui, a former senior aide to Nancy Pelosi. Arshi, good morning to you. You know, whether you supported her politics or not, you really cannot deny Nancy Pelosi's influence. You've been one of her most trusted advisors for years. Would you mind sharing insights into working so closely with her? What are your greatest takeaways from that experience?
Well, good morning. I would say what really gets lost in the conversation, because certainly her legislative record, her ability to be a disruptor, and as also an institutionalist, I think is well documented. But the pragmatic streak is often overlooked, and you can't enact the types of the big pieces of legislation that Nancy Pelosi has ushered in that really has changed the way millions of Americans live their lives without that pragmatic streak. So I think for me, I think that's the piece that often gets lost in the conversation, is this notion of her ability to really compromise and thread the needle to get the ball over the finish line.
And I want to talk about, Prop 50. She did so much work in order to do just that. Her work ethic is something also that's been talked about extensively in the wake of this announcement. She slept very little, reportedly, only about 4 or 5 hours a night, even into her 80s. So what did you know was the driver behind that intense schedule, really all of these years?
You know, it's interesting because I'm a daughter of immigrants, and hard work is ingrained into my DNA. And I think with Nancy Pelosi, one piece that was I think it just really did move mountains for her in her career was her focus and her determination. And she just was relentless. And she would outwork anybody in Washington consistently. And that consistent dedication to hard work, I think, really has paid off. And we've seen how it's paid off.
We touched on it off the top, but what are your thoughts on the timing of this announcement? One of her last major political pushes was for Prop 50, California's redistricting measure that made it across the finish line pretty comfortably.
Yeah, it's interesting because the one other kind of through line in her career is this ability to meet the moment. So when you look at what happened in California, first of all, it went to the voters, so it wasn't done in any closed back room door or room. It was done out in the open. The voters decided, and it was temporary. It was just in a defensive measure to address some of these efforts in Texas to basically rig the elections going forward. So I think when you look at all of that put together, this notion of creating a level playing field where the next election can be a marketplace of ideas where voters can choose, I think that really typifies, what she's done in her career.
Prop 50, her talking with the president, former President Biden, about not running in that last race. What do you believe will be her legacy? These were just some of the more recent events in her career.
I would say I would go back to policy. You look at the Affordable Care Act, and obviously that's front and center. And now that the Affordable Care Act, these premiums are just spiking in a very significant way. And the Affordable Care Act, when you look at that piece of legislation, she did, talk about work ethic and drive and persistence. That very much was a product of a culmination of a career in terms of enacting legislation. So for me, I look at the financial crisis. She met the moment there in terms of taking a really bipartisan approach to ensure that our economy didn't fall over a cliff. You can go on and on what she did with the Ryan White funding and that piece of legislation. The list goes on. And I think policy is ultimately what she is going to be remembered for.
Well, a storied political career. Arshi Siddiqui, certainly appreciate your perspective. A pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.